Welcome everyone to today's Historical Explainer. Settle in because today we are taking a fascinating classroom journey back in time. Imagine, if you will, a powerful dynasty that stood as a steadfast, literally unbreakable shield for an entire subcontinent. For nearly 3 centuries, stretching right from the 8th to the 11th century, this incredible empire held off repeated foreign invasions. They protected ancient cultural traditions, they controlled these incredibly vital trade routes, and they ultimately decided exactly who would rule the vast plains of North India. Today, we're diving deep into the story of the Gurjara Pratihara Dynasty. It's a story packed with immense power, grand architecture, and epic rivalries that totally shaped early medieval India.
Okay, let's just quickly check our syllabus for today. We're going to cover 1. The rise of India's shield, 2. The Tripartite Struggle and Kannauj, 3. The Golden Age of Empire, 4. Administration and culture, and finally, 5. The decline and final days.
Section 1. Rise of India's shield, post-Gupta power and Western origins.
So following the fall of the massive Gupta Empire, North India basically fractured into chaos. You had all these various regional powers constantly clashing for dominance. And out of this highly volatile environment, right in the regions we now know as modern-day Rajasthan and Gujarat, a brand new group of fierce warriors and administrators emerged. We know them as the Pratiharas. Now, the name itself is derived from Sanskrit, and it literally translates to doorkeeper or protector. And honestly, that hit the nail right on the head. Because of their geographical location out in the west, they became the literal doorkeepers of India. They were the very first line of defense against incoming foreign armies.
Let's walk through our first timeline here to see how this started. The true foundation of their power kicks off with Nagabhata I, who ruled from roughly 730 to 760 CE. His absolute greatest achievement? Stopping the rapidly expanding Arab armies that were advancing from Sind. I mean, this monumental victory saved a massive portion of India from early foreign rule. It completely cemented their reputation as the supreme protectors of Indian land. Soon after that, around 780 CE, a highly ambitious ruler named Vatsaraja took the throne, and he immediately set his sights on total northern dominance.
Section 2. Tripartite Struggle and Kannauj, the 150-year epic rivalry.
Which leads me to ask the class a pretty important question. Why fight for Kannauj? Why did every single major power want this one specific city? Well, think of it like the ultimate geopolitical jackpot. Sitting right on incredibly fertile land and controlling highly lucrative trade routes, whoever held the wealth of Kannauj was basically recognized by everyone as the undisputed ruler of North India.
Now, what's really interesting here is the sheer scale of this conflict. It was a 150-year stalemate between 3 massive empires. You had the Pratiharas pushing from the west, the Palas from the east, and the Rashtrakutas coming up from the south. During Vatsaraja's reign, the Pratiharas really flexed their military muscle. They actually defeated the Pala king, Dharmapala. But then they were dealt a pretty crushing blow by the Rashtrakuta king, Dhruva. Yet, even in that defeat, they proved to the entire subcontinent that they were a major, formidable contender. They could go toe-to-toe with absolutely anyone.
Section 3. Golden Age of Empire, reaching the peak of power.
Let's move along our timeline. After decades of this completely exhausting 3-way war, the tide finally turned with Nagabhata II, ruling from 800 to 830 CE. He actually did what his predecessors had only dreamed of. He captured Kannauj. By taking down his rivals, he finally declared himself the supreme ruler of North India. And this breakthrough set the perfect stage for Mihira Bhoja, ruling from 836 to 865 CE, to usher in the absolute peak of the dynasty's power. It was an era of vast, stable unity, which his successor, Mahendrapala I, managed to successfully maintain until 910 CE.
And this brilliantly illustrates a perfect partnership across generations. Nagabhata II was the foundational conqueror, right? He took Kannauj and transformed it into this grand capital, just packed with beautiful palaces and massive markets. Then, building directly on that solid foundation, Mihira Bhoja ushered in a true golden age. Yes, he was a fierce warrior, for sure, but he was also a tremendous patron of culture. Under his rule, the empire was so prosperous, so well organized, and militarily robust that foreign travelers visiting India at the time literally wrote extensively about its absolute greatness.
Section 4. Administration and culture beyond the battlefield.
Because, you can't run an empire of this massive size on just military might alone.
Their administration was a highly efficient, well-oiled machine. At the very top, the king made all the big-picture decisions on wars, tax policies, and treaties, heavily aided by a trusted circle of ministers and generals. Right below them, regional kings were allowed to maintain their rule, provided they paid steady tribute and demonstrated absolute loyalty. And then finally, at the grassroots level, local chiefs handled the day-to-day governance of the villages. This ensured a really steady flow of land revenue to fund their massive armies and local projects.
And their cultural investment was absolutely staggering. As devout followers of both the Vaishnava and Shaiva traditions, the Pratiharas didn't just protect Hinduism, they actively enriched it. They built these incredibly grand, intricately stone-carved temples. They were also massive patrons of education, generously supporting Sanskrit scholars, poets, and Brahmins. Because they held that defensive shield so firmly at the borders, Indian culture was able to survive and truly thrive, deeply influencing the temple architecture of central and western India for centuries to come.
Section 5. Decline and Final Days. The Cracks and Collapse. Let's look at our final timeline for today. Because as history shows us time and time again, no golden age lasts forever. After the reign of Mahendrapala I, severe cracks, both internal and external, really started to form. By the 10th century, during Mahipala I's reign, the empire was just getting hammered by continuous attacks from the Rashtrakutas, and local vassals began to rebel. Then, by the late 10th century, disaster struck. King Rajapala failed to defend the grand capital of Kannauj from new waves of foreign invasions. The empire essentially shattered. By the time Yashpala took the throne in 1024, the once mighty Gurjara Pratihara Dynasty was reduced to a tiny, completely fragmented territory. So the crucial point here is that empires rarely fall from just one single cause. It's almost always a domino effect. The Pratiharas spent way too much energy and resources fighting endless wars against their Indian rivals. That exhaustion, combined with a string of weak successors, allowed local feudatories, like the Chandelas and Paramaras, to just break away and seize the real regional power. With the empire divided, trade routes were disrupted, revenue plummeted, and the military weakened. And that left the door wide open for renewed, unchecked invasions from Central Asia. It is a textbook historical lesson on the dangers of internal division.
It's a pretty profound and honestly tragic historical irony. The very dynasty whose name literally meant protector, the shield that had guarded the subcontinent's western borders for hundreds of years, ultimately fractured so completely that King Rajapala couldn't even protect his own capital city of Kannauj. When Kannauj fell and suffered such heavy losses, the Pratiharas' prestige in the eyes of other Indian rulers was irreparably destroyed. The 300-year shield had officially shattered.
As we wrap up today's lesson, I really want this thought to sink in. Without them, Indian history might have taken a completely different direction. Despite their eventual collapse, the Gurjara Prathiharas left a massive, undeniable legacy. They were the great defenders, the brilliant administrators, and the master builders who fundamentally shaped the political and cultural landscape of early medieval North India.
I'll leave you with this final question to ponder. We've seen how they balanced power, culture, and the immense responsibility of being a subcontinent shield. But their history forces us to ask, when internal unity breaks down and factions put their own power above the stability of the whole, can any empire, no matter how rich or culturally magnificent, truly survive? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking questions, keep digging into the past, and I'll see you for our next historical journey.